Have you ever seen someone try to tear another person down, only to watch them rise stronger? That's exactly what happened one night in a bustling New York restaurant, where the scent of fresh herbs and warm bread filled the air, and a single moment turned the room upside down. The place was alive with chatter, glasses clinking, and forks scraping plates. People sat at sleek wooden tables, some sipping wine, others scrolling phones, their voices blending into a lively hum. Moving through the crowd was Lisa Chen, dressed in a crisp white shirt, red waistcoat, and black pants, her blonde hair falling in loose, stylish curls. To everyone around her, she was just a waitress, carrying trays and dodging elbows. But Lisa was no ordinary server. She carried a secret, her eyes sharp with purpose. At a corner table, David Kane sat like a king. The billionaire's tailored suit and smug grin demanded attention. His family surrounded him. His mother, her pearl necklace gleaming under the lights, her lips curled in a tight smile, and a few others, all dressed like they owned half the city. They were celebrating maybe a new deal, maybe just their own importance. David's voice cut through the restaurant's noise, loud and cocky. "This place is decent, but the service?" he said, making sure everyone heard. "They must be desperate to hire people like this." His mother let out a sharp laugh, her eyes flicking toward Lisa as she approached with a tray of appetizers. Lisa set down a small plate of olives, her hands steady despite the weight of their stares. A year ago, she wasn't carrying trays, she was building Kane software side by side with David. Her code, her ideas, her sleepless nights laid the foundation for his empire. But he'd betrayed her, forced her out, and left her with nothing but a broken dream. Tonight, she wasn't here to serve food. She was here to settle a score. Nobody in the room knew she owned 90% of David's company, a truth she'd hidden while rebuilding her power through quiet deals and endless grit. David picked up an olive, holding it like it was a personal offense. He squinted at it, then tossed it back onto the plate with a sneer. "What is this trash?" he said, his voice sharp enough to make nearby tables glance over. "You call this food? Who even hired you?" His family laughed, their eyes glinting with the same arrogance. Lisa's jaw tightened, but she kept her voice steady. "Is there a problem with the dish, sir?" she asked, her tone calm, almost too calm. David leaned forward, his face twisting into a mocking grin. "Everything's a problem, sweetheart. Look at you, stuck playing waitress. Pathetic." The word hit like a slap, but Lisa didn't flinch. She'd heard worse from him before, back when he stole her work and claimed it as his own. A few patrons nearby shifted in their seats, sensing the tension. At a table close by, a couple of influencers had their phones out, filming quietly, their eyes bright with the promise of viral drama. David's mother leaned in, her voice dripping with scorn. "Dear, maybe you should stick to something simpler, like cleaning tables." The family laughed again, louder this time, and David, feeding off their energy, grabbed the olive plate and shoved it toward Lisa. A few olives rolled onto the floor, bouncing near her feet. Lisa knelt to pick them up, her movements slow and deliberate. Inside, her heart pounded, not from fear, but from a fire she'd carried for months. She'd been through too much to let their words break her. She stood, meeting David's gaze with steady eyes. "I'll get you a new plate," she said, her voice low but firm. David scoffed, leaning back in his chair like he owned the world. "Don't bother. You're embarrassing yourself. What's your name, anyway?" "Not that it matters." He smirked, and before Lisa could answer, he leaned forward and spat, right on her red waistcoat, a wet stain spreading across the fabric. The restaurant went quiet, the hum of conversation replaced by sharp gasps. The influencers' cameras zoomed in, their fingers moving fast to stream the moment live. Lisa stood frozen for a second, the spit dripping down her chest, but her eyes stayed locked on David's. The room felt smaller, the air heavy, as every person turned to watch. She could feel their stares, some shocked, some pitying, some waiting for her to crack. David's family was still chuckling, though his mother's laugh faded, her eyes narrowing like she sensed something wasn't right. Lisa wiped the spit with a napkin, her movements slow and calm, her silence louder than their mockery. Then she spoke, her voice cutting through the tension like a knife. "Shut up, David." The words were simple but hit like a thunderclap. His smirk vanished, replaced by a flicker of confusion. His mother's eyebrows shot up, her pearl necklace catching the light as she leaned back. The rest of the family went silent, their forks hovering over their plates. The influencers leaned closer, their phones capturing every second of the moment. Lisa stood tall, her curls glowing under the restaurant's soft lights, her eyes burning with something fierce. "You don't get to talk to me like that anymore, David." The words cut through the silence like a knife. David blinked, his confusion turning to a sneer. He leaned forward, his sharp suit creased, his voice low and mean. "Who do you think you are, some nobody waitress?" The word nobody was meant to hurt, but Lisa didn't flinch. She stepped closer, her black pants brushing a chair, her eyes locked on his. "I'm Lisa Chen," she said, pausing to let the name sink in. "The woman who built Kane Software. The one you betrayed and stole it from." The restaurant exploded in gasps. David's face went white, his jaw dropping like he'd been hit. His mother let out a sharp, "What?" her hand clutching her glass so tight it nearly cracked. The other family members stared, their eyes darting between Lisa and David, their fancy clothes suddenly looking out of place. The influencers' cameras zoomed in, their live streams lighting up with shocked emojis, gasping faces, wide eyes, and fire symbols. Comments poured in, "No way." "She said what? This is insane." A man at a nearby table leaned toward his friend, his voice loud with disbelief. "Did she just say she built his company?" Another woman whispered, "I knew he was shady." The buzz grew, the air thick with tension. Lisa's voice rose, calm but fierce, like she was telling a truth she'd held too long. "You took my code, my ideas, my dream. You pushed me out, lied to everyone, and thought I'd just disappear. But I didn't, David. And now, I own 90% of Kane Software." The words hit like a bomb. The crowd's murmurs turned into shouts. "No way," a woman in a red dress yelled from a corner table, her voice shaking with anger. A man in a suit stood, clapping slowly, his face hard. "You stole her company?" he called, pointing at David. Others joined in, their voices rising like a wave. "Thief!" a young woman shouted, grabbing an egg from her brunch plate and throwing it. It hit David's chest, the yolk splattering across his white shirt, dripping down his tie. David flinched, raising his hands to block another egg that flew from a different table, this one smacking his shoulder, yellow dripping onto his jacket. "Stop this," he yelled, his voice breaking, no longer the confident billionaire. His family scrambled, their chairs scraping loudly against the wooden floor. His mother's face twisted in horror as an egg sailed past her, hitting the tablecloth with a wet splat, staining her silk sleeve. "This is outrageous," she snapped, grabbing her purse and holding it like a shield. But the crowd wasn't listening. A group of college students at a high-top table started chanting, "Justice! Justice!" their fists pounding the table, their drinks shaking. The influencers moved closer, their phones catching every angle, their streams now hitting tens of thousands of viewers. Comments flooded in, "Get him! She's a queen! Kane's finished!" Lisa stood still, her curls framing her face, watching the chaos she'd sparked. She'd planned this moment for months, ever since David forced her out of Kane Software. After his betrayal, she'd worked in the shadows, buying shares, meeting investors in quiet coffee shops, signing deals late at night. She'd sold everything she owned, poured every penny into taking back what was hers. She'd chosen to work as a waitress tonight, not because she needed the job, but because she wanted David to underestimate her one last time. She wanted him to see her in that uniform, white shirt, red waistcoat, black pants, and think she was nothing. Now, the room was on her side, their anger fueling her strength. David shoved his chair back, his face red with rage. "This is lies," he shouted, pointing at Lisa. "She's nobody. She's making it up." But his voice shook, and the crowd wasn't buying it. A man in a flannel shirt stood, throwing another egg that hit David's table, splattering his mother's dress. She shrieked, "How dare you!" and tugged at David's arm. "We're leaving," she said, her voice high and panicked. His family stumbled to their feet, dodging more eggs as the crowd booed, their voices loud and unforgiving. A woman yelled, "You don't belong here." Another shouted, "Pay for what you did." The influencers followed, their cameras tracking David's every move, the live stream now trending across social media, hashtags like #LisaChin and #CaneDown spreading like wildfire. Lisa didn't move. She reached into her waistcoat pocket, her fingers closing around a folded envelope. "David," she called, her voice cutting through the noise like a bell. He turned, his eyes wild, his hair messy from dodging eggs. She tossed the envelope onto his table, where it landed among the spilled olives and yolk stains. "Legal papers," she said, her tone even but firm. "You'll want to read them. They're about your future, or what's left of it." The crowd roared, some clapping, others shouting her name. "Lisa! Lisa!" A woman near the bar raised her glass, yelling, "To justice!" Others joined in, their cheers echoing off the walls. David grabbed the envelope, his hands trembling as he tore it open. His eyes scanned the pages, and his face went paler, if that was possible. The documents laid it all out, her shares, her ownership, the board's agreement to back her. He looked up at Lisa, his mouth opening, but no words came out. She met his gaze, her eyes steady, no trace of the fear he'd once counted on. She turned away, her curls bouncing as she walked toward the kitchen, the crowd parting for her like she was royalty. The influencers kept filming, their streams now at hundreds of thousands of views, comments flooding with praise. "She's a legend. Took him down. This is epic." By morning, the internet was ablaze. Clips of David spitting on Lisa, her calm reveal, and the crowd throwing eggs were everywhere. On news sites, social media, even morning talk shows. Headlines screamed, "Billionaire shamed by ex-partner in viral restaurant clash." Twitter was flooded with memes, David dodging eggs, Lisa standing tall, her words looping in video after video. The restaurant's name trended, with people calling it the spot where justice happened. Lisa sat in her small apartment, her phone buzzing with notifications. She scrolled through the posts, her lips curving into a small, quiet smile. Her family, her parents and younger brother, called, their voices thick with pride. "You did it, Lisa," her brother said, his voice cracking. "You showed the world who he really is." She set her phone down and looked at the papers on her table, board meeting notes, shareholder agreements, her plan to take back Kane Software. She'd spent months preparing, buying shares through secret deals, convincing investors who believed in her vision. She'd faced doubt, sleepless nights, and moments when she wondered if it was worth it. But last night in that restaurant, she'd seen the look on David's face, the shock, the fear, and knew it was. Tomorrow, she'd walk into the boardroom and take her place as CEO. She wasn't nervous. She was ready. Her fingers brushed a photo on her desk. Her, years ago, coding in a tiny apartment, dreaming of a company that would change the world. David had tried to steal that dream, but now she was taking it back, piece by piece. Lisa stood, smoothing her blazer, already thinking of the board meeting. The world was watching now, but she didn't care about the fame. She cared about the work, and the people who'd believed in her. Her parents' voices echoed in her mind, their pride grounding her. She glanced out her window at the city, its lights bright against the dawn. Lisa Chen stood outside the towering glass doors of Kane Software's boardroom, her hand resting lightly on the handle. The New York skyline stretched beyond the windows, a sea of steel and lights that reminded her of the nights she'd spent coding, dreaming of a company that could change lives. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a sleek ponytail, her sharp blazer and skirt a far cry from the Waitress uniform she'd worn the night before. Her heart beat steady, not with fear but with a quiet fire. The viral video of David Kane spitting on her, her bold reveal as the true founder of Kane Software, and the crowd pelting him with eggs had set the internet ablaze. Now, in this sleek boardroom, she was ready to finish what she'd started. She pushed the door open and stepped inside. The room was quiet, the long mahogany table lined with executives in crisp suits. David sat at the far end, his face pale, his tie crooked, a shadow of the smug billionaire from the restaurant. His eyes flicked up as Lisa entered, narrowing with a mix of anger and dread. The other board members sat stiffly, some clutching folders, others glancing at their phones, where news alerts about last night's showdown still buzzed. Lisa had sent those folders ahead, stacked with proof of her 90% ownership, every share she'd clawed back through months of secret deals and sleepless nights. She'd built this company once, and now she'd rebuilt her power to take it back. Lisa stood at the head of the table, her voice clear and calm. "Good morning," she said, her eyes sweeping the room. "I'm Lisa Chin, the majority shareholder of Kane Software. As of today, I'm taking over as CEO." David's head snapped up, his mouth opening to argue, but Lisa cut him off with a raised hand. "Don't, David. The papers you got last night? They're real. Your time's up." The room went silent, the air heavy. An older executive with gray hair and glasses adjusted his tie, nodding slightly. A woman across the table, her pen tapping nervously, gave Lisa a small, approving smile. David's hands gripped the table, his knuckles white. "You can't do this," he spat, his voice shaky, nowhere near the booming confidence he'd shown at the restaurant. "This is my company." Lisa met his gaze, her eyes steady, unflinching. "No, David. It was mine first. My code, my vision, my work. You lied, cheated, and pushed me out. You thought I'd break, but I didn't. I bought back what you stole, share by share." She slid a folder across the table, its pages detailing his removal and her ownership. The board members flipped through them, some whispering, others nodding. David's mother, sitting in the back as a guest, let out a sharp gasp, her pearl necklace clinking as she leaned forward. "This is absurd," she said, her voice shrill. "David built this company." But no one listened. The room's attention was on Lisa. An executive stood, holding up the folder. "The evidence is clear," he said, his voice steady. "Ms. Chen owns 90% of Kane Software. She has every right to lead." Another board member, a younger man with a buzz cut, clapped once, then twice, his face breaking into a grin. "About time," he said. Others joined in, their applause soft but growing, a sign of respect. David's face turned red, his eyes darting around like a trapped animal. "You're all fools," he shouted, but his voice cracked, and the applause drowned him out. Lisa didn't smile. She didn't need to. She'd won. "Effective immediately," she said, her voice cutting through the noise. "David Kane is fired as CEO. I'm stepping in to rebuild what he broke." The applause grew louder, filling the room. David grabbed his briefcase, his hands shaking, and stormed toward the door. His mother scrambled after him, her heels clicking, muttering, "This isn't over." But it was. The boardroom door slammed shut behind them, the sound echoing like a final nail. The weeks that followed were a blur of action. Lisa moved into the CEO's office, a bright space with floor-to-ceiling windows. Her old sketches and code notes covered the desk, reminders of the company she'd dreamed up years ago. She revived her original projects, software to help small businesses grow, apps to make education free and accessible, ideas David had shelved for quick cash grabs. The staff rallied behind her, their energy electric. Engineers who'd worked with her in the early days came back, their faces lit with excitement. "You're back," one said, shaking her hand, his eyes bright. "We missed you." Meetings buzzed with ideas, the office alive with purpose again. The media couldn't stop talking about her. Headlines screamed, "Waitress turns out takes down Billionaire in epic showdown." Talk shows replayed the restaurant video, Lisa's calm, "Shut up, David," becoming a catchphrase online. Social media exploded with memes, David dodging eggs, Lisa standing tall, her curls glowing like a crown. People posted stories of their own fights against unfair bosses, tagging her as an inspiration. The restaurant where it all happened became a hotspot, with customers leaving notes thanking Lisa for her courage. One note, scribbled on a napkin, read, "You showed us we can fight back." Lisa kept it on her desk, a quiet reminder of why she'd done this. David's world, meanwhile, was falling apart. Lawsuits hit him from every side. Shareholders furious about his lies, partners cutting ties, even former employees speaking out about his bullying. The egg-throwing video played endlessly online, his reputation shredded. A blurry photo surfaced of him outside a lawyer's office, his suit wrinkled, his face tired, no trace of the swagger he'd once had. His family stayed quiet, their arrogance gone, their social invites drying up. Lisa didn't dwell on his downfall. She was too busy building. Her family visited the office one afternoon, their eyes wide as they saw her name on the Kane software sign. Her mom hugged her tight, tears in her eyes. "You did it, Lisa," she said. "You made it right." Her younger brother, usually shy, grinned and said, "You're a rock star." Lisa laughed, the sound light, something she hadn't done in months. They walked through the office, her parents beaming as employees stopped to shake her hand, some even asking for selfies. "You're an inspiration," a young coder told her, her voice earnest. Lisa nodded, her throat tight, feeling the weight of their trust. One morning, Lisa stood at her office window, the city sprawling below. The company was growing fast, its stock climbing, its projects making waves. At a staff meeting, her team gave her a standing ovation, their cheers echoing through the room. Industry leaders sent emails, praising her vision and asking to collaborate. A tech magazine named her CEO of the Year, its cover showing her in her blazer, her eyes bright with determination. Even the restaurant sent a gift, a framed photo of the night she'd faced David, with a note, "Thanks for making history here." Lisa hung it in her office, not for vanity but as a reminder of her strength. She thought back to the early days, coding in her tiny apartment, dreaming of a company that could help people. David had tried to steal that dream, to break her, but she'd fought back, not with anger but with grit. Now, standing in her office, her team behind her, her family proud, she felt a quiet pride. It wasn't loud or showy, but it was hers. She'd taken back her company, her dream, her life. And she was just getting started. Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, hit that like button, share it with someone who loves a good twist, and subscribe for more cinematic tales that hit you right in the heart. Let us know in the comments where you're watching from.